ードドラゴンは史上最強。お前らちゃんと聞け。
Welcome back to the channel. I'm Big Kumo. No one calls me Kumo. Much like director Kamanaka, I'm back. I'm more youthful than ever. And I'm so anti-discrimination that I've come to hate everyone equally. A ton has happened in Tengoku since my last video. The Cosmic Gardener came and planted Sawatari. We learned Toru and Robin's origin stories. We confirmed a couple more Man-Eater identities. And Ishiguro made an absolute fool out of me. But because I have a public humiliation kink, and because no one else makes Tengoku videos, you are stuck with the biggest of Kumos. So join me and my room temperature IQ in this video as we break down chapter 65 of Heavenly Delusion. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the large mutated bird in the room. Last year, I said this: we can look at what traits each kid has to predict which man-eater they will become. The hawk from the hotel in episode 1 and 2 had quick, agile whips. Taka means hawk, and he was extremely fast and agile.
You sound crazy. What an idiot!
Obviously, we know from this chapter, the hotel man-eater is not Taka. Admitting I was wrong is about as appealing as a turd in a hot tub, but I was indeed wrong. I'm extremely sorry. I will never say anything confidently about this series ever again. Now, let's hop into chapter 65 so I can spread more misinformation with my analysis. This chapter is exclusively about the origin of New Heaven in Osaka. The cover is Maru and Kiriko sitting back to back like Forrest and Bubba, Kiriko reading a book, Maru watching Kiriko reading a book. So we know that Maru is an iPad kid. We start 5 days after the Jewel Spear of Heaven did what Team USA did to French basketball at the Olympics. Mikura, her right-hand woman Nanaha, and her left-hand man Sachio are stockpiling supplies because Mikura, piloted by director Kamanaka, wants to get a jump on preparing for the era of heaven. Alright, we gotta pause here. Some people think Sachio is a girl. I violently don't care. What matters is that Sachio has a big ol' crush on Mikura and does anything Mikura says. Back to it. We don't know much about the Nata, Mako, Sakia friend dynamic in the Takahara days, but surely Nata, who is now Mikura, wasn't as assertive and bossy and attention-seeking pre-brain transplant. I'm looking forward to Nanaha commenting on the change in personality at some point in the future. Also notable, Mikura is genuinely close with Nanaha and Sachio. If we contrast this with how distant and cold Mikura was according to Maru, it's clear that the future passing of Nanaha and Sachio permanently affect Mikura, the director. Kinda like how the passing of my favorite war criminal, Uncle Iroh, made me stop firebending. 3 pages into the chapter and the Taka truthers are absolutely cooked. I have committed all of the Man-Eater tribal patterns to memory, so when Nanaha throws up these hieroglyphics to activate the Eye of Sauron, I knew I would have to issue an apology about the damn Hotel Man-Eater pretty much immediately.
Oh, I'm sorry,
this panel
sir.
felt like Ishiguro was insulting me directly. Anyway, our teenage mutant controversials escape and head to the Osaka branch of Takahara Academy, where they have been packing supplies for the winter. As they approach, they see a crowd commandeering the building. In case you forgot, the public-facing branch of Takahara Academy was a place to build a community for neat freaks and hikikomori, a place for withdrawn incels to belong. Some of these people could have been Andrew Tate fans if not for the director. Actually, I would still unironically argue that the director had a more positive impact on society than Andrew Tate, even though she got all Thanos about it. At least she was not an Adobe attachment. The receptionist, Mochizuki, tells everyone that they have enough supplies and can take everyone in. Kinda like Kirby. She even gives special praise to director Kamanaka for having this much vision and foresight. At first, Mikura is furious, even though Mochi says she'll share the supplies with our brave trio. Obviously, Mochi had no idea that it was Mikura and the gang that collected all the supplies, but as our trio watches from the sideline, all of these shut-ins start doing testimonials about how great Kamanaka was, how great Takahara is, and then a tearful Mikura says, "It looks like everything I've done up until now wasn't a mistake." This is one of the few times the director has expressed anything close to regret for essentially overseeing the decimation of the global population, but crucially, she still stands by the decision so far. In this moment, Mikura decides to set up the New Heaven at the Osaka branch. Meanwhile, her supporting cast is also crying. We got Sachio furious that they made Mikura cry, Nanaho is sad that they have to share all the supplies she helped stockpile, so in one panel you've got tears of joy, tears of anger, tears of sadness. It's beautiful. A maladjusted shut-in decides to confess to Mochi and propose, all in one. Shampoo, conditioner. He's looking like a real Cro-Magnon cross Neanderthal in the face. Mochi actually lets him down gently, saying that she has a kid and a husband. But this is a shut-in who hasn't had access to Discord or Reddit for 5 whole days. The emotional damage of being cut off from the internet and then being rejected is too much for him to bear. So he punches right through the door, King Kong grabs Mochi, and holds up inside the building, which is freshly stocked with all the supplies he could ever need. Our favorite hypocrite Mikura is stunned that someone could commit crimes in a time of crisis. Can you believe it? And she rolls out with the squad to save Mochi. Please look at Sachio's face compared to Nanaho's face. This boy is love-struck to the maximum. They go to the second floor and I notice that Mikura is putting on a theatrical performance, so I'm prepping myself to see if some amazing ability is gonna come through. Absolutely nothing amazing comes from Mikura. Nanaha uses her power again, and the Taka truthers get cooked. Again, it's very clear that the Hotel Man-Eater was in fact Nanaha, aka Sachio, which is not even that hard to accept when you think about it. Shiro already said that if you die a human, you won't turn into a man-eater. Because Taka got whooped by Michika before he contracted the disease, we shouldn't expect Taka to have a man-eater transformation at all. He's just dead, like me inside. Nanaha does her Hiruko Eye in the Sky, then Sachio does her Vaporeon. Wait, that's not the word. Vaporize. That's the word. Sachio does her Vaporize move, and we have another concrete man-eater ID. If you remember Helm, she was in the arc right after the Robin essay in the Kiriko timeline. Helm was fighting a man-eater when Kiriko and Maru saved her. Chapter 65 confirms that Sachio becomes the man-eater that Helm was fighting. Also notice that Sachio has his palms up to activate his powers. We're gonna pause again here since my reputation is already in shambles. This is a great time to tell you one of my conspiracy theories that I had for maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't believe it anymore, so don't come after me in the comments. But the Dreams of Hell arc with Helm lasted 3 chapters, and the cover art for those chapters were the director, Helm, and Sachio's Man-Eater. Based on what we know about the incident with Helm and some of what Maru said about her past, I briefly, and we're talking about Silk Boxer briefly, thought that Helm was the love child of Mikura and Sachio. But I don't anymore. Okay, Ishiguro, leave me alone. The ages are a little bit tight, so I ruled it out. Whatever, back to the breakdown. Forget I said anything. Mikura, Sachio, Nanaha save Mochi and exit expeditiously. Notice on the walkout, Mikura goes from regular strides to praise me you peasants. Always an entertainer. The chivalrous Neanderthal knight notices that Mochi is gone, pops outside to reclaim her by force. Mikura pulls out a Fist of the North Star reference, and our predictably misogynistic caveman tells her that she should watch anime for girls. Absolutely unacceptable. This might be the most offensive thing that I've read in the entire series. I was really offended by this comment. By the way, notice that Sachio has his palms up this entire time. Also notice Nanaha's bombastic side-eye, which means that she's not necessarily down with the whole now you see me routine that Mikura is putting on. Mikura lets him live, quote unquote, but restates the principles of Takahara and tells him that he should keep his heart pure and honest. Let's pause again right here to discuss a few major details. First, we don't know what the original Nata's powers were, but we assume that all of the Hiruko children had superhuman traits, so we were kinda thinking that something would happen with Mikura. Second thing to notice is that after stealing Nata's body and becoming Mikura, we have yet to see director Kamanaka do any type of special abilities. So maybe it could be that that brain transplant prevents the director from tapping into those abilities, or it could be related to the fact that the transplant was performed on a container that was below the recommended age limit, which is about 13. Kuku was 3rd generation and she was 10 years old at Takahara. Since Nata was 4th generation, she would have had to be 8 or 9. Lastly, I love the idea of the director discussing possible scenarios with Sachio and Nanaha and saying, hey, whenever I do Fist of the North Star, just go ahead and roll with it. It's clear that Sachio understood the assignment as soon as this thing kicked off. Mikura tells Mochi to check the registration since they are 4th generation of Takahara and says their original names, Sakaya, Mako, Nata. With that, she can retake the base of operations and start figuring out how she's gonna build a new heaven. Fire chapter as always, all the lukewarm takes made in this video were my own. Don't blame Ishiguro, blame me. The biggest thing is that chapter 65 confirms 2 more man-eater identities, so let's update the list of our 7 confirmed man-eaters. You've got Cuckoo Clock, who turns into the sushi Pokemon. We've got Kona, whose man-eater we saw when Mimihime was talking to him in the infirmary. Mako, aka Sachio, reflects and vaporizes. Nanaki popped out of the polycule to become an arachnid with frosted tips. Los Angeles, California became an amorphous blob through the power of dance or whatever Anzu did. And Sachio, aka Nanaha, showed us why Airbnb sucks. She's that bird that we saw early in episode 1 or 2 or early in the manga, since we're sticking with manga right now. After reading this chapter, I was very satisfied. There's one thing that I do desire. We know what New Heaven looks like in the present day. We know what the Ministry of Reconstruction sites look like in the present day. All of these towns are relatively better off than the rest of Japan, but we can all agree that the era of Heaven mostly sucks. You got man-eaters, you got bandits, you got wild animals, you got disease, you got famine. We saw different characters reckon with their roles in it. So you've seen Sawatari try to make amends for his role in all this. Same thing for Awashima. Toru is trying to make amends for murdering a family the day before the great disaster. I need to see the director reckon more with her actions. Not necessarily to feel apologetic or remorseful, but I need to hear an internal monologue or maybe a convo with another character that's a little bit more long form and direct. Not necessarily, but I would strongly appreciate it. I don't have too much more analysis from that chapter, so let's call it here. Let's set a target. Let's do it. Let's be very ambitious. If I can get 3 views on this video, then I'll make one on chapter 66. How's that sound? Anyway, I'm calling it here. Elsai Kangaroo, Big Kumo out.